There is a particular kind of power that moves through the world without announcing itself. It does not raise its voice. It does not demand attention. It does not need to. This power lives in the space between words, in the pause before a response, in the eyes that watch while others perform. It is the power of the observer, the one who sees what others miss, who understands what remains unspoken, who knows that silence is not emptiness, but a canvas upon which truth reveals itself in brushstrokes of gesture, breath, and hesitation. You have felt it, perhaps without naming it. That moment when someone enters a room and says nothing, yet everyone adjusts. That colleague who rarely speaks in meetings, but whose single comment shifts the entire direction of the conversation. That friend who asks one quiet question that unravels the careful story you have been telling yourself. These are not accidents. These are not coincidences. These are the architects of invisible influence, the masters of a game most people do not even realize they are playing. The world celebrates the loud, the charismatic speaker, the bold decision maker, the one who fills every silence with sound, every pause with performance. But beneath this theater of noise, another drama unfolds. It is quieter, deeper, more permanent. It is the drama of observation, of strategic silence, of power that accumulates not through action but through awareness. And once you learn to see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you understand its mechanics, you will recognize it everywhere, in every relationship, every negotiation, every moment of human connection. Before we continue, a warning. The knowledge that is about to be shared cannot be unlearned. It will permanently change the way you see human relationships. If you are ready to abandon comfortable illusions and see what is behind the stage, subscribe now. Because this is not just a video. It is the beginning of your journey under the mask. Now let us begin. Picture a conference room on the 14th floor of a building that looks like every other building in the financial district. The morning light cuts through Venetian blinds in precise horizontal lines, dividing the room into layers of brightness and shadow. 8 people sit around a table of polished wood that reflects their faces like a dark mirror. They are here to decide the future of a project that represents millions of dollars, hundreds of jobs, the trajectory of careers. The air smells of coffee and the faint chemical sweetness of dry erase markers. Someone has written objectives on the whiteboard in blue ink that is already beginning to fade. Marcus sits at the head of the table. He is the director, the one whose name appears on the organizational chart above all the others in this room. He speaks with the confidence of someone who has never questioned whether people will listen. His voice fills the space, bouncing off the glass walls, the acoustic ceiling tiles, the faces of those who nod in rhythm with his words. He gestures broadly, his hands cutting through the air as if physically shaping the future he describes. He uses words like synergy, optimization, strategic alignment. He speaks for 7 minutes without pause, without doubt, without space for interruption. But watch. Do not watch Marcus. Watch Elena. She sits 3 seats to his left, her posture neither rigid nor relaxed but something precisely between, a studied neutrality that draws no attention. Her hands rest on the table, fingers loosely interlaced, no pen, no paper, no laptop open before her. While Marcus speaks, she does not nod. She does not smile. She does not frown. Her face maintains an expression of calm attention that reveals nothing of the calculations occurring behind her eyes. But her gaze moves, slowly, methodically. She watches Marcus for exactly 3 seconds, then shifts to observe Jennifer, the marketing lead, whose foot has begun to tap beneath the table. Then to David, whose jaw tightens almost imperceptibly when Marcus mentions budget reallocation. Then to Sarah, who glances at her phone screen for the 4th time in 5 minutes. Elena says nothing. She has said nothing for 12 minutes. But she is learning everything. This is the first principle of observational power. While others perform, you collect. While they broadcast, you receive. Every word someone chooses to say reveals 10 words they chose not to say. Every gesture contains the ghost of the gesture they suppressed. Every expression is a negotiation between what they feel and what they wish to be seen feeling. And the observer, the one who watches with intention, with patience, with the understanding that information is the currency of influence, this observer accumulates wealth while others spend themselves in the performance of certainty. Marcus finishes his monologue. There is a brief silence, the kind that feels like a held breath, and then Jennifer speaks. She agrees with Marcus, her voice bright with enthusiasm that sounds rehearsed, and she adds 3 supporting points that are really just restatements of what he has already said. David nods and mentions a concern, but he frames it carefully. wrapping his doubt in layers of agreement, making sure everyone knows he is a team player even as he plants a seed of hesitation. Sarah suggests a timeline adjustment, her tone apologetic, as if asking permission to have an opinion. Elena waits. She waits through Jennifer's performance of loyalty. She waits through David's camouflaged resistance. She waits through Sarah's self-diminishment. She waits until the energy in the room has shifted, until the initial momentum of Marcus's speech has begun to dissipate, until people start to glance at their watches, their phones, the clock on the wall. And then, in the space between one person finishing and another beginning, in that moment of collective breath, Elena speaks. Her voice is quiet, not timid, not uncertain, quiet in the way that makes people lean forward to hear. She says exactly 4 sentences. She does not agree or disagree with Marcus. She does not praise or criticize. She simply observes aloud what she has seen. She mentions that Jennifer's marketing data from last quarter showed a different trend than the one being assumed. She notes that David's concern echoes a pattern from a previous project that ended in costly delays. She points out that Sarah's timeline actually aligns with the fiscal calendar in a way that could provide strategic advantages. And then she stops. She does not conclude. She does not recommend. She simply places these observations on the table like cards in a game whose rules only she fully understands. The room shifts. It is subtle, the way a room shifts when the true center of gravity reveals itself. Marcus is still at the head of the table. His title has not changed. But the attention, the real attention, the kind that determines whose words will be remembered when the meeting ends, has moved to Elena. People look at her differently now. They sit up slightly. They put down their phones. Because she has done something that Marcus, for all his authority and volume, could not do. She has shown them that she sees. And in seeing, she has demonstrated a power that does not need to announce itself. This is the second principle. The observer does not compete for attention. The observer earns attention by proving that their silence was not absence but presence of a different quality. When you speak after truly watching, your words carry a weight that performance cannot manufacture. You are not guessing. You are not posturing. You are reporting from a vantage point others did not know existed. And once people realize you occupy that vantage point, they begin to wonder what else you have seen. What else you know. What else you have chosen, until now, not to say. Let us leave the conference room and travel backward in time, to the place where Elena learned to watch. She is 9 years old, sitting at a dinner table in a house that always smells faintly of lavender and tension. Her mother sits at one end of the table, her father at the other, and between them stretches a distance that has nothing to do with the physical space of 6 feet. Her older brother, Thomas, fills the silence with stories from school, his voice too loud, too eager, performing the role of the child who can make everything normal through sheer force of cheerfulness. Elena learned early that her family operated on 2 levels. There was the surface level, the one where people passed dishes and asked about homework and commented on the weather. And there was the underneath level, where the real communication happened in glances held too long, in the specific way her mother set down a glass, in the particular silence that followed certain words. Thomas never learned to read the underneath level. He lived entirely on the surface, believing that if he talked enough, smiled enough, achieved enough, he could somehow repair what was broken. But Elena watched. She noticed that when her father came home before 6 o'clock, her mother's shoulders relaxed by approximately 2 inches. She observed that certain topics, seemingly random, would cause her father's hand to tighten around his fork. She catalogued the different qualities of silence. The comfortable silence of Sunday mornings, the tense silence before arguments, the exhausted silence after them, the dangerous silence that meant someone was deciding whether to say the thing that could not be unsaid. By the time she was 11, Elena could predict her parents' arguments 3 days before they happened. She could read the atmospheric pressure of her home, the way sailors read the sky. And she learned something crucial. Knowledge without action is its own form of power. She did not try to prevent the arguments. She did not take sides. She did not perform like Thomas, trying to be good enough to fix what was not her responsibility to fix. She simply adjusted. She knew when to be absent, when to be present, when to ask for things, and when to wait. She became a master of timing, of strategic visibility and invisibility. Her parents divorced when she was 13. Thomas was devastated, blindsided, unable to understand how the family he thought he knew could simply end. But Elena had been preparing for 3 years. She had already grieved. She had already adapted. and she had learned the lesson that would shape the rest of her life. The people who watch understand the story before it is told. The people who only perform are always surprised by the ending. This is the third principle, and it is perhaps the most uncomfortable. Observation creates distance. To watch clearly, you must step back from the emotional immediacy of the moment. You must become, in some sense, separate. Not cold, not unfeeling, but separate enough to see patterns instead of just experiencing chaos. This distance is both the source of the observer's power and the price they pay for it. Elena understood her family better than Thomas did, but she also felt less connected to it. She was the scientist studying the experiment, and you cannot be fully inside an experiment you are studying. The years pass. Elena moves through high school like a ghost who gets excellent grades. She is not popular, but she is not unpopular. She is not the student council president, but she is the one the student council president consults before making decisions. She does not date the quarterback, but she is the friend his girlfriend calls when she suspects he is lying. People tell Elena things. They always have. There is something about her quality of attention, the way she listens without judgment, without interruption, without the visible effort of formulating her response while they are still speaking, that makes people feel safe enough to reveal themselves. But Elena knows a secret that her confessors do not. She is not listening out of kindness. Or rather, the kindness is real, but it is not the primary motivation. She is listening because information is power, because understanding people's fears and desires and contradictions gives her the ability to navigate the social world with a precision others lack. She does not use this information cruelly. She is not manipulative in the obvious sense. She simply knows which words will comfort, which questions will deflect, which silences will encourage someone to fill the space with truth. By the time she reaches university, Elena has refined her approach into something approaching art. She chooses a major in organizational psychology, the academic study of what she has been practicing intuitively for years. She learns the theories that explain what she has observed: cognitive biases, group dynamics, power structures, the gap between stated values and revealed preferences. She learns that what she does has names: emotional intelligence, strategic empathy, observational analysis. She learns that it is not manipulation if you are simply seeing clearly and acting on what you see. She joins study groups where she rarely speaks, but somehow always influences the direction of the work. She attends parties where she positions herself near the kitchen, the place where people gather in smaller groups, where the real conversations happen away from the performance of the dance floor. She dates occasionally, but she finds that romantic relationships require a vulnerability that conflicts with her observational stance. To truly love someone, you must allow them to surprise you, to remain partially unknown. But Elena's entire identity is built on knowing, on seeing, on understanding before being understood. This is the fourth principle, and it cuts deep. The observer's power is lonely. It is powerful, yes. It is effective. It opens doors and creates opportunities and allows you to move through the world with a confidence born of understanding. But it also builds walls. Because if you are always watching, always analyzing, always 3 steps ahead in the chess game of human interaction, when do you stop? When do you allow yourself to simply be, without calculation, without strategy, without the part of your mind that is always noting, cataloging, preparing? Elena graduates with honors. She is recruited by a consulting firm that specializes in organizational transformation. It is perfect for her. She is paid to observe, to analyze, to see the patterns in companies that the people inside them cannot see because they are too close, too invested, too busy performing their roles. She walks into dysfunctional organizations, and within a week she can map the real power structure, the one that exists beneath the official hierarchy. She can identify the informal leaders, the bottlenecks, the unspoken conflicts that are slowly poisoning productivity. She rises quickly, not through self-promotion, not through charisma, not through working longer hours than everyone else. She rises because she is right. Her observations are accurate. Her recommendations work. And people begin to realize that the quiet woman who sits in the corner of meetings, who asks strange questions, who seems to notice things no one else notices, this woman sees something they do not. And in a world of uncertainty, of complexity, of rapid change, the person who sees clearly becomes invaluable. But here is what Elena's colleagues do not understand. Here is what makes her different from the other consultants who also observe, who also analyze. Elena does not just watch behavior. She watches the watchers. She has learned that in any group, there are levels of observation. Most people are not watching at all. They are simply reacting, living inside their own experience, focused on their own concerns. Some people watch one level deep. They notice obvious patterns, read basic body language, pick up on clear emotional cues. But Elena watches 3, 4, 5 levels deep. She watches what people watch. She notices who looks at whom when a difficult question is asked. She tracks who checks for whose reaction before forming their own opinion. She observes the micro-hierarchies that form in every interaction, the subtle dance of dominance and deference that most people perform unconsciously. And most importantly, she watches for the other observers. Because in every organization, there are 1 or 2 others like her. People who are also watching, also calculating, also playing the game at a level beneath the obvious. These are her real competition. Not the loud executives, not the charismatic leaders, but the other quiet ones. The other people who have learned that power accumulates to those who see. And when Elena identifies them, she does something interesting. She does not confront them. She does not compete directly. She simply lets them know, through a glance, through a carefully chosen comment, through a moment of shared understanding, that she sees them seeing. And in that moment, a decision is made. Will they be allies or adversaries? Will they share information or guard it? Will they collaborate in shaping the invisible currents that determine outcomes? Or will they work against each other? This is the 5th principle. The highest level of observational power is observing the observers. It is the metagame, the game about the game. And once you learn to play at this level, you realize that most of what people think of as reality is actually a collective agreement, a story everyone has decided to believe. The observer who can see the story as a story, who can recognize the constructed nature of social reality, gains the ability to edit that story. Not through force, not through obvious manipulation, but through strategic interventions, through carefully placed questions, through the introduction of information at precisely the right moment. Let us return to the conference room, but now you understand what you are watching. The meeting has continued. Marcus's initial proposal has been discussed, debated, modified. Elena has spoken 3 more times, each intervention brief, each one shifting the conversation in subtle ways. And now, 45 minutes into the meeting, something interesting happens. Marcus proposes a solution that is actually a modified version of an idea Elena planted 15 minutes ago. But he proposes it as if it is his own. He has internalized it, made it his, believes genuinely that he thought of it. Watch Elena's face. Does she correct him? Does she claim credit? Does she show any sign of irritation or satisfaction? She does none of these things. Her expression remains neutral, attentive, unchanged. Because this is exactly what she wanted. This is the observer's ultimate power move. To influence without being seen as influencing. To shape outcomes while allowing others to believe they are the shapers. To win the game so completely that no one realizes a game was being played. Marcus's proposal is adopted. The meeting ends. People gather their laptops, their notebooks, their coffee cups. They file out of the room discussing next steps, action items, deadlines. And as they leave, several of them make a point of catching Elena's eye, of nodding, of acknowledging something that has no name but is nonetheless real. They do not know exactly what she did, but they know she did something. They felt the room change when she spoke. They noticed that the final decision somehow incorporated her observations. And their respect for her, their awareness of her, has deepened. But there is one person who understands more clearly. David, the one whose jaw tightened during Marcus's opening speech, the one whose concern was noted and incorporated. He lingers as the others leave. He approaches Elena with a question that is not really a question. He says, "You saw that coming, didn't you?" The whole direction of the meeting. And Elena smiles, a small smile that acknowledges without confirming. She says, "People usually tell you what they are going to do, if you listen carefully enough." And David nods, understanding that he has just been given a lesson disguised as a casual comment. This exchange lasts perhaps 20 seconds. But in those 20 seconds, Elena has accomplished several things. She has confirmed David's intuition that she operates at a different level. She has offered him a piece of genuine insight, creating a sense of debt, of gratitude. She has done this privately away from the others, making it feel like privileged information, like he has been selected for special attention. And she has done it all while maintaining her fundamental stance. She observes, she understands, she shares selectively, but she does not perform. She does not need to convince David of her power. She simply demonstrates it and lets him draw his own conclusions. Over the following weeks, a pattern emerges. David begins to seek Elena's perspective before meetings. He frames it casually, as if he is just thinking out loud, but both of them know what is happening. He is recruiting her as an advisor, an interpreter of the organizational dynamics he can sense, but not fully read. And Elena accepts this role, but carefully. She does not tell him what to do. She does not make his decisions for him. She simply points out things he might not have noticed. She asks questions that lead him to insights he believes are his own. She is teaching him to observe, but only to a point. She is making him more effective, but not so effective that he no longer needs her. This is the sixth principle, and it reveals the ethical complexity of observational power. When you can see more clearly than others, when you understand the hidden dynamics that shape outcomes, you face a constant choice. Do you use this knowledge to help people? To manipulate them? To protect yourself? To advance your interests? The answer, for most observers, is all of the above. The power of observation does not come with a moral instruction manual. It is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for many purposes. Elena tells herself that she uses her power ethically. She does not lie. She does not sabotage. She does not hurt people for sport. But she also does not pretend that her help is purely altruistic. When she assists David, she is also creating an ally, someone who will support her initiatives, someone who owes her something even if that debt is never explicitly named. She is building a network of people who see her as valuable, as insightful, as someone worth listening to. And this network is her real power base, more solid than any title, more durable than any formal authority. Months pass. The project that was discussed in that first meeting moves forward. There are complications, as there always are. Budget issues, personnel conflicts, technical challenges, and at each crisis point, Elena is consulted. Sometimes in formal meetings, more often in hallway conversations, in quick calls, in emails that ask for her thoughts on a sensitive situation. She has become the unofficial advisor to half the leadership team, the person they turn to when they need to understand what is really happening beneath the surface of events. And here is what they do not realize. Every consultation, every question they ask her, every problem they bring to her attention, gives her more information. They think they are asking for her help, and they are, but they are also, without knowing it, feeding her observational database. They are telling her about conflicts she would not otherwise know about. They are revealing their own fears, ambitions, blind spots. They are giving her the pieces of a puzzle they do not realize she is assembling. Elena now has a map of the organization that exists nowhere else. She knows who trusts whom, who resents whom, who is looking for a new job, who is having an affair, who is struggling with addiction, who is brilliant but insecure, who is confident but incompetent. She knows the fault lines, the pressure points, the leverage points. And she knows all of this not because she gossips, not because she pries, but because people tell her. Because she has created a persona, an identity, as the safe observer. The one who listens without judgment. The one who understands without condemning. The one who sees but does not tell. Except she does tell. Selectively. Strategically. Never in a way that can be traced back to her. She mentions to one person that another person might be open to a particular idea. She suggests to a manager that a team member might be struggling and could use support. She plants seeds of information that grow into actions that shape outcomes. She is not controlling events. She is too subtle for that, but she is influencing the probability of certain outcomes, tilting the playing field in directions she prefers, all while maintaining her reputation as a neutral observer. This is the seventh principle, and it is the darkest one. The observer's power is deniable. Because you are not seen as acting, because your influence is indirect, because you can always claim you were just sharing information, just offering perspective, just trying to help, you operate in a space of plausible deniability. If something goes wrong, you are not the decision maker. If someone gets hurt, you are not the one who hurt them. You are just the messenger, just the advisor, just the observer who happened to mention something that someone else chose to act on. Elena knows this. She knows that her power exists in the shadows, in the space between observation and action. And she knows that this gives her a freedom that more visible leaders do not have. Marcus, the director, is accountable. His decisions are public. His failures are visible. But Elena can influence Marcus's decisions without being accountable for them. She can help shape the direction of the organization without having to defend that direction. She has power without responsibility, influence without accountability. And this is both the appeal and the danger of the observer's path. One evening, Elena stays late at the office. The building is mostly empty, just the hum of ventilation systems and the distant sound of a cleaning crew. She stands at the window of the conference room, looking out at the city lights, the grid of illuminated windows in other buildings where other people are working late, performing their own versions of ambition. And she allows herself a moment of honest reflection, the kind she usually avoids because it threatens the careful equilibrium she has constructed. She is successful. By any external measure, she has achieved what she set out to achieve. She is respected, well compensated, influential. She has mastered the art of observational power. She can walk into almost any situation and within minutes understand the dynamics, the players, the likely outcomes. She has become the thing she set out to become. And yet, standing alone in the dark conference room, she feels the weight of a question she has been avoiding. What has she lost in becoming this? She thinks of Thomas, her brother. They speak occasionally, brief calls on birthdays and holidays. He is a teacher now, married, 2 children, living a life that seems from the outside almost aggressively normal. He is not powerful in the way Elena is powerful. He does not see what she sees. He does not play the game she plays. But when they talk, she can hear something in his voice that she recognizes as absent from her own. A kind of ease. A lack of calculation. He is not always watching. He is not always analyzing. He is simply living, reacting, feeling, without the constant meta-awareness that defines Elena's existence. She wonders, not for the first time, if she made the right choice. If the power she has accumulated is worth the price she has paid. Because the price is not obvious. It is not dramatic. It is simply this: she is always on. Always observing. Always 3 steps ahead. Always aware of the gap between what people say and what they mean, between what they show and what they hide. She cannot turn it off. She cannot unsee what she has learned to see. She cannot unknow what she knows about human nature, about power, about the theatrical nature of social reality. This is the 8th principle, and it is the one that observers rarely discuss. The power of observation changes you. It is not a skill you can put on and take off like a uniform. It becomes part of how you process reality. And once you have learned to see the world as a system of patterns, of strategies, of performances and counter-performances, you cannot go back to innocent participation. You are always, to some degree, outside, always watching, always aware of the constructed nature of the moment you are inside. Elena's moment of reflection is interrupted by the sound of footsteps in the hallway. She turns from the window to see Marcus entering the conference room. He looks surprised to find her there, then something else crosses his face. Relief, perhaps, or recognition of an opportunity. He asks if she has a moment to talk. She says yes, because she always says yes to these requests, because they are the currency of her influence. They sit at the conference table, the same table where weeks ago Elena first demonstrated her observational power. But now the dynamic is different. Marcus is not performing. His usual confidence has cracks in it. He speaks haltingly, unusually vulnerable. He tells her that he is struggling, that the pressure from above is increasing, that he is not sure he is the right person for his role, that he sometimes feels like he is performing a version of leadership that does not quite fit who he actually is. Elena listens. She does what she always does. She watches his hands, his eyes, the rhythm of his breathing. She notes the specific words he chooses, the metaphors he uses, the places where his voice catches. And she understands, with the clarity that comes from years of observation, that Marcus is asking for something he cannot directly name. He is asking for permission. Permission to be uncertain. Permission to be human. Permission to stop performing the role of the confident leader and admit that he, too, is navigating by guesswork and hope. And Elena faces a choice. She could use this moment to increase her power over Marcus. She could position herself as his confidant, his advisor, the one who knows his secrets. She could leverage his vulnerability into greater influence. This is what the strategic part of her mind suggests. This is what years of observational training have prepared her to do. But there is another part of her, a part she usually keeps carefully controlled, that recognizes something else. Marcus is not performing right now. He is not playing the game. He is simply a human being, tired and uncertain, reaching out for connection. She makes a decision that surprises her even as she makes it. She tells Marcus the truth. Not a strategic truth. Not a carefully calibrated response designed to achieve a particular outcome. But a simple human truth. She tells him that everyone feels this way sometimes. That leadership is not about having all the answers, but about making decisions with incomplete information and living with the consequences. That the performance of confidence is just that, a performance, and that the gap between the performance and the reality is where actual wisdom lives. And then she tells him something she has never told anyone at work. She tells him about her parents' divorce, about watching her family fall apart while her brother performed cheerfulness, about learning that observation was both power and isolation, about the cost of always seeing, always knowing, always being 3 steps ahead. She tells him that she sometimes envies people who can simply be in the moment, without the constant awareness of patterns and strategies and hidden dynamics. Marcus listens, and something shifts between them. The game they have been playing, the dance of authority and influence, pauses. For a few minutes, they are not director and consultant. They are 2 people who have chosen paths that give them power, but also separate them from the simple human connection they both, in different ways, crave. When Marcus leaves, he thanks her. Not for advice, not for strategy, but for honesty, for letting him see, briefly, behind her own mask. Elena sits alone in the conference room again. She feels strange, exposed. She has violated one of her core principles. She has revealed herself. She has allowed someone to see her not as the observer, but as the observed. And she is not sure if this was wisdom or weakness. But she knows that something has changed. The perfect control she has maintained, the careful distance between her observational self and her emotional self, has developed a crack. This is the 9th principle, and it is the most paradoxical. The observer's greatest power comes from being unseen, from maintaining distance, from never fully revealing themselves. But the observer's greatest limitation is also being unseen, maintaining distance, never fully revealing themselves. There is a point where power becomes prison, where the strategies that protect you also isolate you, where the mask you wear to observe the world becomes indistinguishable from your face. The weeks that follow are different. Elena continues to observe, to analyze, to influence. But she is more aware now of the choice she is making with every interaction. To calculate or to connect. To strategize or to simply be. She finds herself occasionally choosing connection. Not often. Not in ways that compromise her effectiveness. But enough to remind herself that she is not just an observer. She is also a participant. She is also human. She has lunch with David, and instead of subtly gathering information, she tells him about a book she is reading. She asks Jennifer about her children, not to build rapport for strategic purposes, but because she is genuinely curious. She sends Thomas a text message that is longer than her usual birthday greeting, asking about his life, his teaching, his experience of fatherhood. These are small things, tiny cracks in the armor of observation, but they feel significant. And here is what she discovers. Her power does not diminish. If anything, it deepens. Because when people sense that you are not just observing them, but also allowing yourself to be observed, when they feel that the exchange is not entirely one-sided, they trust you more. They reveal more. They are more willing to be influenced by you, because they sense that you are not just using them, but also, in some small way, joining them. This is the 10th principle, and it points toward a synthesis. The most sophisticated form of observational power is not pure observation. It is the ability to move fluidly between observing and participating, between distance and connection, between strategy and spontaneity. It is the wisdom to know when to watch and when to act, when to calculate and when to simply respond from the heart. This is harder than pure observation. It requires not just intelligence, but emotional courage. It requires the willingness to be vulnerable, to be wrong, to be seen. Elena is learning this. Slowly. Imperfectly. She still watches more than she speaks. She still sees patterns others miss. She still influences outcomes through strategic observation and carefully timed interventions. But she is also learning to sometimes put down the observer's lens and simply be present. To laugh without analyzing why something is funny. To feel frustrated without immediately understanding the psychological dynamics of her frustration. To connect with people not as subjects of study, but as fellow travelers in the strange theater of human existence. Let us shift our perspective now. Let us observe the observer being observed. Because Elena is not the only one who watches. In the same organization, in the same building, there is another person who has learned the power of observation. His name is James. He is younger than Elena, newer to the company, less experienced. But he has the gift, the ability to see beneath the surface, the patience to watch and wait, the understanding that information is power. James has been watching Elena. He has noticed what others have not, that she is the invisible center of influence, that decisions somehow align with her observations, that people seek her out, defer to her, adjust their positions after speaking with her. He has noticed all of this, and he has made a decision. He will learn from her. He will study her methods, and eventually he will surpass her. He begins to position himself in her orbit. He asks her questions that seem naive, but are actually quite sophisticated. He observes how she observes. He notes that she watches people's hands, their eyes, their breathing. He sees that she speaks rarely but precisely. He recognizes that she has created a persona of neutral helpfulness that makes people trust her with information they should probably guard. And he begins to replicate these techniques. At first, Elena does not notice. James is subtle. He does not compete with her directly. He does not challenge her observations or try to claim credit for insights. He simply watches and learns. But gradually, over months, Elena begins to sense something. A shift in the room when James is present. A quality of attention from him that feels familiar. She starts to pay attention to him, to watch the watcher. And she realizes what is happening. James is studying her. He is learning her methods. He is becoming what she is. And she faces a choice that every master of observational power eventually faces. Does she see him as a threat or as a successor? Does she try to undermine him or mentor him? Does she guard her techniques or share them? She remembers her own journey. How she learned by watching. How no one taught her explicitly, but she absorbed the lessons nonetheless. How she became powerful precisely because she figured it out herself, through observation and practice and countless small experiments and influence. And she realizes that James is doing the same thing. He is walking the path she walked. And she can either try to block that path or she can acknowledge that the path exists independent of her. That observational power is not her personal possession, but a set of skills that anyone with the right combination of intelligence, patience, and emotional detachment can develop. She makes a decision. She will not mentor James explicitly. That would rob him of the discovery process that is essential to truly mastering these skills. But she will not undermine him either. She will simply let him know that she sees him, that she recognizes what he is doing, that she respects it, and that the organization is large enough for multiple observers, multiple centers of influence, as long as they are not working against each other. She creates an opportunity to speak with James privately. She does not confront him. She does not accuse him of anything. She simply mentions, casually, that she has noticed his skill at reading group dynamics, that he has a talent for observation, that this talent, if developed carefully, can be a powerful tool. And she says one more thing. She says that the most important thing she has learned is that observation without ethics becomes manipulation, and manipulation eventually destroys the trust that makes observation powerful. James understands. He understands that Elena has seen him seeing, that she knows what he is doing, and that she is offering him something. Not mentorship exactly, but acknowledgement, a kind of professional respect between people who play the same game. And implicit in this acknowledgement is a warning. Use this power wisely. Use it ethically, because if you do not, I will see that too, and I will respond accordingly. This is the 11th principle. Observational power creates a hierarchy of awareness. Most people are unaware. Some people are aware of the obvious. A few people are aware of the hidden. And a very few people are aware of the aware. When you reach this level, when you can identify and interact with other observers, you enter a different game. It is no longer about having power over the unaware. It is about negotiating with other people who also have power, who also see clearly, who also understand the mechanics of influence. These negotiations are subtle. They happen in glances, in carefully chosen words, in the decision to share information or withhold it. They are alliances formed and dissolved without contracts, without explicit agreements. They are based on mutual recognition, on the understanding that you are both playing a game that most people do not know exists, and that you can either help each other or hurt each other, but you cannot ignore each other. Over time, Elena and James develop a working relationship. They are not friends. Friendship would require a vulnerability that neither is willing to offer. But they are colleagues in a deeper sense than most people in the organization are colleagues. They are fellow observers. They sometimes share information. They sometimes coordinate their interventions. They sometimes simply acknowledge each other across a conference room, a brief meeting of eyes that says, "I see what just happened. I know what you're doing. I understand." And the organization benefits from this, though it does not know it. Because Elena and James, working in loose coordination, can see and address problems that would otherwise fester. They can identify conflicts before they explode. They can recognize talent that is being overlooked. They can sense when the official story being told about a project or a person diverges too far from reality, and they can introduce corrections gently, indirectly, in ways that allow people to save face while adjusting course. But there is also danger in this, because two observers who coordinate can also manipulate. They can shape reality to serve their interests. They can eliminate threats. They can construct narratives that benefit them while harming others. The same skills that allow them to help can be used to hurt. And the only thing that prevents this is their individual ethics, their personal choices about how to use the power they have accumulated. This is the 12th principle, and it is the one that determines whether observational power becomes wisdom or corruption. Power without ethics is just manipulation. Observation without compassion is just exploitation. The ability to see clearly is morally neutral. What matters is what you do with what you see. Do you use your understanding to help people grow, to make organizations healthier, to reduce suffering? Or do you use it to advance yourself, to eliminate competition, to control others? Elena thinks about this often now, more than she used to. Her conversation with Marcus, her acknowledgement of James, her small experiments in connection rather than pure observation, all of these have made her more aware of the ethical dimension of her power. She has always told herself that she uses her abilities ethically, but she is starting to question what that means. Is it ethical to influence people without them knowing they are being influenced? Is it ethical to collect information that people do not realize they are giving you? Is it ethical to see people more clearly than they see themselves and use that clarity to shape their decisions? She does not have clear answers, but she is asking the questions, and the asking itself is changing her. She is becoming more conscious of her choices, more deliberate about when to intervene and when to simply observe, more willing to sometimes share what she sees, to make her observations explicit rather than using them covertly. This makes her less purely powerful in some ways, but it makes her more human, and increasingly, she values the humanity more than the power. Let us now examine a moment of crisis, because it is in crisis that the true nature of observational power reveals itself. The organization faces a scandal. A senior leader has been accused of harassment. The accusations are credible. The situation is volatile. The leadership team is in emergency mode, trying to manage the fallout, protect the organization's reputation, make decisions about accountability and consequences. Elena is called into a meeting with the executive team. She is not normally included at this level, but they want her perspective. They want her to help them understand the situation, to read the dynamics, to advise on how to proceed. She enters a room full of tension. People are scared, angry, defensive. The usual masks of professional composure are slipping. Real emotions are showing through. The accused leader, Richard, is not in the room, but his presence dominates the conversation. People are divided. Some believe the accusations immediately. Some are skeptical. Some are trying to remain neutral, while clearly leaning one way or the other. And everyone is calculating how this will affect them, calculating what position to take, calculating how to protect themselves while appearing to care about justice. Elena watches. She watches who speaks and who stays silent. She watches who makes eye contact with whom. She watches the micro-expressions that flash across faces when certain possibilities are mentioned. And she sees something that others are missing. The division in the room is not really about Richard or the accusations. It is about older conflicts, older alliances and resentments that are now finding expression through this crisis. She sees that Marcus, who has been Richard's rival for years, is using this moment to finally eliminate a competitor. She sees that Jennifer, who has always been loyal to Richard, is struggling between that loyalty and her genuine horror at the accusations. She sees that David is paralyzed, unable to choose a side, afraid of being wrong. And she sees that the CEO, who should be leading this conversation, is actually looking around the room, trying to gauge which way the wind is blowing before committing to a position. This is observational power at its most potent and most dangerous. Elena can see the truth of the situation. Not the truth about whether Richard is guilty, that is for an investigation to determine, but the truth about what is happening in this room. The truth about the motivations, the fears, the calculations. And she has a choice. She can use this knowledge to influence the outcome in the direction she thinks is right, or she can use it to advance her own interests, or she can simply report what she sees and let others decide. She speaks. Her voice is calm, steady, a contrast to the emotional intensity in the room. She does not offer an opinion about Richard's guilt or innocence. Instead, she describes what she has observed. She notes that the conversation has become entangled with other organizational issues. She points out that people seem to be taking positions based on prior relationships rather than the facts of the case. She suggests that the group needs to separate the immediate question, how to respond to the accusations, from the larger questions about organizational culture and accountability. Her intervention does something interesting. It breaks the emotional momentum. It introduces a meta-perspective, a way of seeing the conversation itself rather than just being inside it. People pause. They take a breath. The quality of the discussion shifts. It becomes slightly less reactive, slightly more thoughtful. Not completely. People are still emotional, still calculating. But there is now a small space for reflection that did not exist before. Marcus tries to regain control of the narrative, to push for immediate termination of Richard. But Elena's observation has made his motivation more visible. Others in the room are now aware that this is not just about justice, but also about power. And that awareness changes the dynamic. The CEO, sensing the shift, proposes a more measured approach. An immediate investigation. Suspension pending the outcome. A commitment to transparency and accountability. It is not perfect. It is not purely just. But it is better than the rush to judgment that was about to happen. After the meeting, several people thank Elena. They say she brought clarity. She helped them think more clearly. But Elena feels unsettled, because she knows that her intervention was not neutral. She made choices about what to observe aloud and what to keep silent. She chose to highlight Marcus's rivalry with Richard, but not to mention that Jennifer's loyalty might be clouding her judgment. She chose to describe the group's dynamics, but not to share her own intuition about Richard's guilt, which, based on years of observing him, she suspects the accusations are true. This is the 13th principle, and it is the most troubling. The observer is never truly neutral. The choice of what to observe, what to report, what to emphasize, these choices shape outcomes. You cannot see everything. You cannot say everything you see. And the selection process, the filtering that happens between observation and communication, is itself a form of power. It is subjective. It is influenced by your own biases, your own interests, your own sense of what is right. Elena has always known this intellectually. But feeling it, experiencing the weight of it in a moment of real consequence, is different. She influenced that meeting. She probably changed the outcome. And she did it while maintaining the appearance of neutrality, of simply reporting what she saw. But her report was not objective. It could not be. Objectivity is a myth. There is only greater or lesser awareness of your own subjectivity. The investigation proceeds. It takes weeks. During this time, Elena watches the organization carefully. She sees how people position themselves, how some distance themselves from Richard preemptively, how others quietly support him, how the rumor mill works, how information and misinformation spread, how narratives form and harden. And she sees something else. She sees the cost of observation. Because she is watching all of this, analyzing it, understanding it, she is not simply experiencing it. She is not allowing herself to just feel angry or sad or confused. She is maintaining her observational distance. And this distance, which has always been her source of power, now feels like a barrier. She wants to simply be outraged if Richard is guilty. She wants to simply grieve for the people he hurt. But she cannot. She is too busy watching how outrage and grief are performed, how they are used, how they become part of the organizational theater. The investigation concludes. Richard is found to have violated policies. He is terminated. The organization issues statements about its commitment to a safe workplace. Training is mandated. Policies are revised. And slowly the crisis fades. The organization moves on. People return to their usual concerns, their usual performances, their usual games. But Elena does not move on, not entirely. The crisis has shown her something about herself that she cannot unsee. She has power. Real power. The power to influence outcomes, to shape narratives, to affect people's lives. And this power comes from observation, from seeing clearly, from understanding dynamics that others miss. But it also comes with a cost. The cost of distance. The cost of always being slightly outside, slightly separate, slightly alone. We must now explore the question that has been hovering at the edges of this story. Is observational power good or bad? Is Elena a hero or a villain? Is the ability to see clearly and influence subtly a gift or a curse? The answer, like most real answers, is complicated. Consider what Elena has accomplished. She has helped her organization make better decisions. She has identified problems before they became crises. She has helped people understand themselves and each other more clearly. She has used her observational skills to reduce conflict, to improve communication, to make the system work more effectively. By these measures, her power has been beneficial. She has made things better. But consider also what she has done. She has manipulated people, even if gently, even if for what she believed were good reasons. She has collected information that people did not know they were giving her. She has influenced outcomes while maintaining the appearance of neutrality. She has built her power on a foundation of distance, of separation, of seeing others as subjects to be understood rather than equals to be joined. By these measures, her power is ethically questionable. The truth is that observational power is like any power. It is a tool. It can be used well or poorly. It can serve others or serve only yourself. It can increase understanding or increase manipulation. The power itself is neutral. What matters is the person wielding it, their intentions, their ethics, their willingness to question their own motivations and biases. Elena is not a villain. She has not used her power cruelly. She has not destroyed people for sport. She has tried, in her own way, to be helpful, to be ethical, to use what she sees in service of good outcomes. But she is also not a hero. She has benefited from her power. She has advanced her career. She has protected herself. She has sometimes chosen her own interests over others. She is, like all of us, a mixture of motives, a combination of selfishness and generosity, of wisdom and blindness. What makes Elena interesting, what makes her story worth examining, is not that she is purely good or purely bad. It is that she is aware. She knows what she is doing. She understands the mechanics of her own power. And increasingly she questions it. She asks herself whether the distance that gives her clarity also costs her connection. She wonders whether the power to influence is worth the inability to simply participate. She considers whether she has optimized for effectiveness at the expense of authenticity. These questions do not have easy answers, but the asking of them is itself a form of growth. Because the greatest danger of observational power is not that it will be used badly. The greatest danger is that it will be used unconsciously. That the observer will become so identified with their role, so invested in their ability to see and influence, that they stop questioning whether they should. They stop asking what they are losing in the process of gaining power. Elena is asking these questions, and in asking them, she is evolving. She is moving toward a more integrated form of power. One that includes observation, but is not limited to it. One that values clarity, but also values connection. One that uses strategic thinking, but also allows for spontaneity, for vulnerability, for the messy, uncontrolled experience of simply being human. This evolution is not complete. It may never be complete, but it is happening. And it is happening because Elena has reached a level of observational sophistication where she can observe herself, where she can see her own patterns, her own defenses, her own strategies, where she can recognize that she too is wearing a mask, the mask of the neutral observer, the mask of the one who sees but is not seen. And she is beginning to wonder what would happen if she took that mask off. This is the 14th principle, and it is the one that transforms observational power from a technique into wisdom. The ultimate observation is self-observation. The ultimate clarity is seeing yourself as clearly as you see others. The ultimate power is the power to change yourself, to evolve, to integrate the observer and the participant into a more complete human being. Let us witness a moment of this integration. Elena is at a party, not a work event, a genuine social gathering. A friend from university is visiting the city and has organized a dinner. Elena almost declined. Social events without a professional purpose have always felt awkward to her. She does not know how to simply socialize without observing, without analyzing, without maintaining her strategic distance. But she goes, and she makes a decision. She will try, just for this evening, to not observe, to not analyze, to not position herself as the watcher. She will try to simply be present, to participate, to allow herself to be surprised, to be spontaneous, to react without calculation. It is harder than she expected. Her observational habits are deeply ingrained. She catches herself watching body language, noting group dynamics, analyzing conversational patterns. But each time she catches herself, she makes a small adjustment. She brings her attention back to the immediate experience. The taste of the wine, the sound of laughter, the feeling of connection with people she has known for years, but has never fully allowed herself to simply enjoy. something unexpected happens. When she stops observing so intensely, when she allows herself to just be in the moment, she actually connects more deeply. People respond to her differently. They seem more relaxed around her, more open, and she realizes that her observational intensity, while giving her information, has also been creating a subtle barrier. People could sense that they were being watched, being analyzed, even if they could not name what they were sensing, and it made them guarded. But tonight, with her guard down, with her observational lens temporarily set aside, people are different with her. They are warmer, more genuine. They tell her things they have never told her before. Not because she is strategically eliciting information, but because they feel safe. Because for once, she is not the observer. She is just Elena, just a person at a dinner party, laughing and talking and being present. It is not perfect. She is not completely unself-conscious. The observer in her is never entirely silent. But for stretches of the evening, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 10, she manages to simply be. And in those moments, she feels something she has not felt in years. A sense of belonging, of connection, of being part of something rather than studying it from outside. When she leaves the party, she feels different, lighter, more alive, and she realizes that she has been carrying a burden she did not fully recognize. The burden of constant observation, the weight of always being the one who sees, who understands, who knows. It is exhausting, and she has been exhausted for years without admitting it. This is the 15th principle, and it is the one that points toward liberation. Observational power is not the only power. Connection is also power. Vulnerability is also power. The ability to simply be, without strategy, without calculation, without the constant meta-awareness of the observer, this is also a form of strength. And the most complete human beings are those who can move between these modes, who can observe when observation is needed, who can participate when participation is needed, who can be strategic and spontaneous, distant and connected, analytical and emotional. Elena is learning this, slowly, with difficulty, because it requires unlearning habits that have served her well. It requires developing capacities that she has deliberately suppressed. It requires becoming more, not less. Adding participation to observation rather than replacing one with the other. This is the hardest kind of growth. Not the growth that comes from mastering a new skill, but the growth that comes from integrating opposites, from holding contradictions, from becoming more complex and more complete. Let us return one final time to the conference room. 2 years have passed since we first observed Elena demonstrating her observational power. The organization has changed. Marcus has moved to a different company. Jennifer has been promoted. David has become a director. James has risen quickly and is now considered one of the organization's most promising leaders. And Elena has been offered a position that would make her one of the most senior people in the company. She sits in the conference room, alone, considering the offer. It is everything she thought she wanted. Power, influence, recognition, the formal authority to match her informal influence. But she is hesitating, because she has learned something over the past 2 years. She has learned that the kind of power she has been accumulating, the power of observation and strategic influence, becomes less satisfying the more of it you have. She thinks about what accepting this position would mean. More meetings, more politics, more performance, more observation. She would be even more effective, even more influential. But she would also be even more separate, even more trapped in the role of the observer, even more distant from the simple human connection that she has been slowly, carefully learning to value. And she realizes that she has a choice, not just about this job, but about who she wants to be. She can continue on the path of observational power. She can become one of the most powerful people in the organization, wielding influence through her ability to see clearly and act strategically. Or she can choose a different path, a path that includes observation but is not defined by it, a path that values connection as much as clarity, a path that allows her to be seen as much as she sees. This is not a simple choice. It is not a choice between good and bad. Both paths have value. Both paths have costs. The path of power offers effectiveness, influence, the satisfaction of understanding complex systems and shaping outcomes. The path of connection offers belonging, authenticity, the satisfaction of simply being human among humans. Most people never consciously choose between these paths. They drift toward one or the other based on temperament, circumstances, the accidents of their history. But Elena is not most people. She is an observer. and she has observed herself clearly enough to understand what she is choosing. If she takes this position, she is choosing power. If she declines it, she is not choosing powerlessness. She is choosing a different kind of power, the power of integration, the power of being whole rather than being effective. She makes her decision. She declines the position. She recommends James for it instead. And she asks for something different. She asks to move into a role that is less about organizational politics and more about developing people. A role where she can use her observational skills not to influence outcomes, but to help individuals understand themselves better. A role that is more about teaching than about playing the game. Her request surprises people. They do not understand why she would turn down such an opportunity. But they grant her request. And Elena begins a new chapter. She works with emerging leaders, helping them develop their own observational capacities. She teaches them to watch, to listen, to see beneath the surface. But she also teaches them something she had to learn the hard way. She teaches them that observation is a tool, not an identity. That the goal is not to become a perfect observer, but to become a complete human being who can observe when needed and participate when needed. She is good at this work, perhaps better than she was at the strategic influence game, because she is teaching from a place of integration rather than a place of pure technique. She is sharing not just the skills of observation, but the wisdom that comes from understanding both the power and the limitations of those skills. She is helping people avoid the trap she fell into, the trap of becoming so identified with the observer role that they lose the ability to simply be. And something interesting happens. Her influence does not decrease. If anything, it deepens. Because now people come to her not because they want strategic advice, though she still offers that. They come to her because they want to understand themselves better. They want to integrate their own contradictions. They want to learn how to be both effective and authentic. And Elena, who has spent years mastering the art of seeing others, is now learning the art of helping others see themselves. This is the 16th and final principle. The highest form of observational power is not using it to control others. It is using it to help others develop their own awareness. It is teaching people to observe themselves, to understand their own patterns, to see their own masks. This is power that multiplies rather than accumulates. Every person who learns to see clearly becomes a source of clarity in the world. Every person who integrates observation and participation becomes more fully human. Elena is 52 years old now. She has spent more than 3 decades developing and refining her observational abilities. She has achieved success by any conventional measure. But the achievement she is most proud of is not her career advancement or her influence or her reputation. It is the fact that she has learned to sometimes put down the observer's lens. That she has developed the capacity to be present, to connect, to allow herself to be seen. That she has integrated the observer and the participant into something more complete. She still watches. She still sees patterns others miss. She still understands the hidden dynamics of human interaction. But she is no longer defined by this. She is no longer trapped in the role of the one who sees, but is not seen. She has learned that true power is not about control. It is about wholeness. It is about being fully human, with all the contradictions and complexities that entails. And so the story comes full circle. We began by observing Elena observing others. We end by observing Elena observing herself. We began with the question of how observational power works. We end with the question of what observational power is for. And the answer that Elena has spent a lifetime discovering, is this. Observation is not an end in itself. It is a means to understanding, a means to effectiveness, but ultimately, a means to something more important, a means to becoming more fully human, more aware, more integrated, more whole. The mind that observes more than it speaks does rule. But the mind that observes itself most clearly rules best. Not by controlling others, but by mastering itself. Not by accumulating power over the external world, but by achieving integration in the internal world. This is the deepest lesson of observational power. This is what lies beneath the mask.